Hi, this is Brent, the Climate Guru. We've heard that the Trump administration is trying to shut down USAID, U.S. Agency for International Development, an agency that's been around since the 1960s and does so much to help in a humanitarian way people all over the world for medical care, social services. And one thing we haven't heard much about is the USAID programs for wildlife and for conservation areas that exist in many parts of the world, Africa, Vietnam, and others. So let's explore a little bit of what USAID does to preserve nature, in addition to what we have an understanding of, which is their humanitarian and medical and educational work. President Trump said he was going to suspend USAID for 90 days, and he suggested that it's full of graft and waste and fraud. And he said, close it down. He wrote on Truth Social, accusing the agency of unspecified rampant corruption and fraud. He said it was run by radical lunatics. There's absolutely no proof of that at all. The agency has been very well monitored and delivers amazing amounts of assistance all over the world. It's a federal agency that began 63 years ago in 1961. It has a budget of $50 billion. One of the oldest and most successful U.S. agencies. It makes up less than 1% of the U.S. government budget. It's minuscule, but with $50 billion that it spends, it accomplishes an amazing amount, not only in humanitarian projects, hospitals, health, social services, education, but as we mentioned, in many environmental projects to preserve wildlife. And considering the amount that's spent, $50 billion, it's a remarkable way, potent way for America to increase its influence, especially compared to military spending, which is close to $1 trillion a year. USAID has a large footprint after the military, employing hundreds of thousands of contractors. And ending USAID will further isolate the United States, damaging our credibility, alienating allies for short-term gains, and will have lasting repercussions. According to the New York Times, Trump planned to reduce the number of workers at AID from about 10,000 to less than 290 positions. To give an example, we're left with only 12 positions in Africa, the entire continent of Africa. The unions representing USAID employees have filed lawsuit against Trump and Marco Rubio, who's the new Secretary of State who took over USAID, and saying that a reduction in personnel and cancellations of global aid contracts is unconstitutional and violates the separation of power. So we're going to see how that plays out in the courts. And the important thing to remember is with a very small budget, less than 1%, compared to 900 billion for military, it accomplishes not only so much for people in the developing world, but establishes our credibility and our trust since 1961. So let's talk about some of the wildlife project that USAID has done. It has established a national park, a wildlife park in Vietnam, created protected areas in Papua New Guinea, restored coral reefs in the Seychelles Islands. The Seychelles Islands are about 1,500 miles to the east of Africa in the Indian Ocean. They're known for their magnificent coral reefs. They were instrumental in creating national parks in Bangladesh and in Mozambique. So what they do is far-reaching, and it's remarkable what they accomplish with their staff and with their budget. National parks have proved to be a stabilizing force for countries around the world. It not only creates stability, but creates local business jobs, protects fragile ecosystems. It kickstarts tourism and other economic opportunities. The surrounding communities in these parks, created by AID or in cooperation with other agencies that it works with, preserves and often benefit. The communities benefit from new or improved health services and schools that often spring up surrounding these local wildlife preservation areas. To give an idea, Colombia USAID created a 5-year, $40 million program in which it creates ecotourism, preserves forests and natural habitats in 6 regions in Colombia, areas previously occupied by guerrillas, paramilitary groups, and drug traffickers. It's been very successful, and one of the areas that it's being developed for international travelers, ecotourism, is called Ciudad Perdida, the Lost City, which is older than Machu Picchu in the Sierra Nevada de Santa Marta range in Colombia. Activities for visitors include hiking, rafting, birding, and often led by former guerrilla fighters who have left off with the peace accords in Colombia to become guides. The international tourism in Colombia has gone up 85% since the mid-2000s, 2010s, because people are discovering that Colombia is a unique, beautiful ecosystems, forests, rivers, and is the second most biodiverse country in the world. It has more habitat than anywhere in the world except for the Amazon in Brazil. There's a USAID program in Vietnam, central Vietnam, with many hectares, and they are preserving forest resources with restoration, ecological restoration and subdivision, protecting landscape, forest resources, and to restore ecosystem, biodiversity, and other values of the forest, silviculture, flora, fauna, hydrogeology, and develop ecotourism. We mentioned the Seychelles Islands to the east of Africa in the Indian Ocean. These are magnificent 115 islands and known for its amazing coral reefs, a rare bird and animal and marine species. And the nation's marine ecosystem has come under severe threat from climate change. As we know, ocean warming is bleaching coral reefs all over the world. A large percent of them have disappeared, perhaps 30%. The rest are under threat. If there's a couple of years in a row when the waters are heat, they cannot recover. And we may have damaged reefs that die. So global warming had a devastating effect on the coral reefs. It resulted in 90% live coral loss in 1998 and a further loss in 2016. What are they doing? USAID has joined with other groups. It's called Project to Save the Seychelles Reef, with the Global Environmental Facility, one group, Nature Seychelles, which is a BirdLife partner, and they are restoring damaged reefs by growing different corals in nurseries underwater and transplanting them to the degraded reef sites. It's been very successful, and it's being looked at by scientists all over the world to see if that can be used, the coral harvesting and replanting these coral to those areas where there's been huge losses of coral reefs in the Caribbean, in Australia, in Southeast Asia, and so on. They grow corals collected from healthy sites in underwater nurseries. They grow them to a certain size, and then they move them and they transplant them to a degraded reef. And it's called the Coral Restoration Project or Reef Rescuers Project. First of its kind, coral gardening method on a large scale, making it very significant in the world. And so scientists are looking at it to use in other locations where coral reefs have become degraded or died from global warming. Colombia's even looking at it as a possible way to restore reefs in Colombia, which are particularly beautiful on Colombia's Caribbean shore. Papua New Guinea. Papua New Guinea is north of Australia. It's the third largest island country in the world. It's on the eastern half of the island of New Guinea, has a border with Indonesia on the west. It's a very unusual country because of the wildlife that's there and the tribes that are found almost nowhere. There are 17 million people that mostly live in rural areas, a small percentage in urban areas, and there's 800 indigenous languages, 839 languages that are spoken in Papua New Guinea. The area became populated when humans left Africa about 50,000 years ago. They went across New Guinea and Australia, which were at that time above the oceans, and they were able to get to Australia. And the oceans again rose and separated Australia from New Guinea, and those different groups of humans evolved separately, New Guinea and also Australia. Papua New Guinea is one of the only 17 mega-diverse countries in the world. It has 6% of the world's animal and plant species, which is amazing, and much of it remains intact. It has 1% of the world's land area and houses the third largest rainforest in the world, with unique flora and fauna. The bird population is spectacular, 730 identified species, 320 amphibians, and 300 reptiles. It has remarkable animals, medium-sized wallaby, which is like a small kangaroo. It has the Huon tree kangaroo, the king bird of paradise, which is a bright-ribbed plumage bird, the emperor bird of paradise, New Guinea harp eagle, and a beautiful blue emperor butterfly. The program is moving ahead, and the idea is to protect those rich terrestrial and marine resources, in addition to provide gender and sustainable livelihoods. The USAID developed a program called Lakatim Program, which in the local language means to preserve and to protect Papua New Guinea's rich terrestrial and marine resources while promoting gender equality and sustainable livelihood programs. This is at risk. They're all at risk of closing down. There's another program in Mozambique, in the southeast part of Africa, part of the Rift Valley. And USAID just celebrated their 40th anniversary in Mozambique. And they played a crucial role in developing Gorongosa National Park, one of the most successful and most beautiful conservation efforts in the region. They're rebuilding wildlife populations. And after a 16-year civil war in Mozambique that happened in the to early 90s, much of the wildlife was wiped out in the battles. They were used for food, and USA provided support for wildlife and habitat restoration for 1.6 million acres in this Gorongosa National Park. It has more than 100,000 animals that it shelters: elephants, lions, hippos, antelope, painted wolves, hyenas, and leopards. USAID trained 470 rangers and provided veterinary care and local youth education and meals programs. A lot of this was spearheaded by an American philanthropist, Greg Carr, who teamed up with the Mozambique government to develop this project. The USAID funding to Gorongosa is $5 million, and then Carr contributed $7 million. And raises the rest in fundraising to support the $25 million operating budget. So it's quite a successful program. The program reaches 200,000 people through mobile medical clinics, health care, sanitation, mobile health units, training community health workers, and promoting child nutrition. It's a remarkable, very successful project, which will be at risk if Trump is successful in shutting down USAID. Bangladesh. In Bangladesh, USAID has a program to protect big cats, tigers, in Bangladesh and also India and Nepal. In the 20th century, tigers nearly went extinct due to human-wildlife poaching and habitat loss. When USAID began investing in tiger conservation in 2010, there were only 3,200 tigers in the world. Working with partners, we've reached 5,500 in 2023. So they are on the rebound. But there's still threats, and the ecosystem must be protected. The forest must be protected in order for the tigers to survive. And that's what they're doing in Bangladesh. India's home to 66% of the world's tigers. And USAID conservation programs in India have a program to strengthen landscape management and conservation projects which work with the government of India and local partners to improve management of the nation's ecologically critical landscape, including those that have tigers. In Nepal, USAID has a big cat conservation program the last 14 years, and the tigers were at a dangerously low level of 121 tigers only in 2009. They've rebounded to 355 in 2021, and they continue to grow. USAID, we know as a humanitarian, health, a social agency that gives a tremendous amount of help all over the world, and is very efficient in what it does, and it gives the United States the credibility that it deserves and the influence it deserves in much of the world because of what it does. And we also know that not only is that at risk, but also these amazing wildlife preservation programs that USAID is doing in all these countries that also stands at risk. We hope that Trump loses these lawsuits by those who want to prevent shutting down of USAID. So we'll be waiting with bated breath on the outcome of these court lawsuits. Thank you. Brent Provinsky, the Climate Guru. Thanks for tuning in to the Climate Guru podcast. Stay inspired, stay informed, and keep taking action for our planet's future. Until next time, and remember, together we can make a difference.